The icy wind cut across the barren plains of Clyros 7, whipping the frozen landscape into a blinding white storm. Snow and ice stretched endlessly in every direction, hiding jagged cliffs and deep crevices. The planet was unforgiving, and yet in the middle of this frozen wasteland, a young alien woman struggled to survive. Lyra, daughter of the notorious alien Baron Zorath, had been abandoned here, left to die. Her father's betrayal had been cruel and swift. He had accused her of treachery, of wanting to undermine his rule, and without hesitation he left her alone, believing the planet itself would take her life. Lyra's breaths came in ragged clouds as she trudged through the thick snow. Her alien physiology, designed for survival in temperate worlds, struggled against Clyros 7's sub-zero temperatures. Her limbs were stiff, her skin cracked from the cold, but her mind burned with a single thought: revenge. She would not die alone in this wasteland. She would return and make her father pay for his cruelty. Hours turned into a day as she wandered blindly, her sharp eyes scanning for shelter. Her strength was fading, and every step felt heavier than the last. She stumbled over a ridge and fell, hitting the icy ground hard. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself up. Collapsing was not an option. Not yet. As the storm raged around her, Lyra spotted a glint in the snow. She stumbled toward it and found the remains of an ancient structure half buried in ice. Strange symbols decorated the walls, glowing faintly despite the storm. Curiosity overcame exhaustion. She forced the door open and stepped inside. The interior was dim but dry, protected from the storm outside. Lyra shivered and rubbed her arms. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, revealing walls covered with strange machinery. It was alien, older than anything she had seen, a relic of a civilization long gone. Her fingers traced the symbols on the walls, and then she saw it. A device, small but intricate, lying on a pedestal in the center of the room. A sense of unease and excitement filled her. This device, it was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Ancient text described it as a symbiotic link, a mechanism that could connect two beings sharing strength, knowledge, and abilities. The idea was risky, but Lyra had no choice. Alone, she would not survive the night, let alone escape the planet. Desperation pushed her forward. She activated the device, and a strange hum filled the room. Lights pulsed across her skin, and a sudden energy coursed through her body. The sensation was unlike anything she had felt. Like her mind and body were expanding, reaching out to connect with another presence. From somewhere deep within the planet, a signal answered. Kale, a human soldier, had crash-landed on Clyros 7 days ago. He was skilled, trained in survival and combat, but completely unaware of the ancient technology buried beneath the ice. When the device activated, his consciousness felt Lyra's presence, and he awoke in the middle of a snowy plain, confused and startled. At first, there was tension. Lyra and Kale were strangers, different in almost every way. He spoke in guttural words, Lyra in melodic tones, yet somehow the device translated their intentions. They could feel each other's thoughts, their fears, their strengths and weaknesses. Mutual suspicion ran high. "Who are you?" Kale asked, his voice cautious but firm. "I am Lyra," she replied, her voice echoing in his mind. "I was left to die by my father. You were drawn here by the same link." Kale studied her form through the device's shared perception. Her alien features were delicate but fierce. Her eyes burned with determination. He could sense the pain of betrayal in her mind. He nodded slowly. "Then, we survived together," he said, a silent agreement forming between them. Their first days were harsh. They shared the burden of survival, each learning from the other. Lyra's alien physiology allowed Kale to endure colder temperatures and recover faster from injuries. Kale's human adaptability taught Lyra how to improvise, how to find resources, and how to plan movements to avoid the deadly predators that roamed the icy plains. They moved as one, a single unit guided by a shared will to live. The symbiotic connection also revealed new abilities. Lyra's enhanced senses allowed Kale to detect danger from miles away, while Kale's tactical mind allowed Lyra to plan ambushes or escape routes. Slowly, they discovered that their link was more than just survival. It amplified both their strengths in ways neither could achieve alone. During a rare moment of calm, Lyra looked out over the endless snowfields. The sun barely pierced the clouds, casting everything in a pale, cold light. She thought of her father, the Baron, and the fortress where he ruled. Anger simmered beneath her exhaustion. He had underestimated her, left her to die without a second thought. But now, with Kale at her side, she felt a spark of hope. Revenge was no longer just a fantasy. It was possible. Kale watched her silently, understanding her thoughts without words. He had faced ruthless enemies before, but he had never met someone with Lyra's resilience. Her determination reminded him of why humans survived on countless worlds. They adapted, endured, and never gave up. He felt respect for her, admiration even, and knew that together they were unstoppable. Their journey continued, filled with both danger and discovery. One day they encountered massive ice crevices, nearly invisible under the thick snow. Lyra sensed them first and guided Kale safely across. Another day, a pack of predatory creatures adapted to the frozen environment surrounded them. Using their combined abilities, Lyra's speed and Kale's strategy, they escaped unharmed, leaving the predators confused and frustrated. Each challenge strengthened their connection. The symbiotic link was no longer just a tool, it was a bond, a shared purpose. They began to anticipate each other's thoughts and movements. When Lyra sensed danger, Kale reacted instantly. When Kale planned a route through the ice fields, Lyra moved ahead, preparing the way. They became a single force, neither purely human nor purely alien, but something new, stronger than either could be alone. As they pressed forward, the remnants of the ancient alien technology continued to guide them. Strange structures emerged from the ice, their purpose long forgotten but still functional. They learned to activate dormant systems, creating shelters, weapons, and tools that made survival easier. They were no longer helpless. They were becoming powerful, even in the frozen desolation of Clyros 7. One evening, as the pale sun dipped below the horizon, Lyra and Kale found a hidden cave. Inside, warmth radiated from geothermal vents, creating a safe place to rest. Lyra removed her gloves, revealing skin still raw from frostbite, and Kale attended to her wounds. They shared stories of their pasts, not out of comfort, but to understand each other. "I was trained to serve," Lyra said softly. "My father expected loyalty, obedience, but he abandoned me anyway." Kale nodded. "I've seen betrayal too. Leaders who care nothing for those who follow them. But that doesn't mean we give up. It means we fight smarter." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then we fight together." As night fell, the storm outside continued to rage, but inside the cave, they found the first sense of peace they had felt since arriving on Clyros 7. Their bodies rested, but their minds were alert, planning the next steps. Lyra knew the Baron's fortress was out there, somewhere beyond the icy plains. Revenge would not come easily, but now she had an ally, and together they could survive anything. In the quiet moments, Lyra and Kale both realized something profound. Alone, they were vulnerable. Together, they were unstoppable. And the planet, once a prison of ice and death, had become the forge where their strength, their bond, and their determination were being tempered. The storm outside roared, but inside, Lyra and Kale were silent and focused. Survival was no longer enough. They would rise from the frozen wasteland, and the Baron would pay for his betrayal. The journey had just begun, but already, the spark of revenge and justice burned brightly in Lyra's heart. The cave was quiet except for the low hum of the geothermal vents and the occasional drip of melting ice. Lyra and Kale had spent the night there, resting their bodies and recovering from the exhaustion of the frozen plains. The storm outside raged on, but inside they were safe, at least for now. Lyra sat on a rock, examining the device that had linked her with Kale. The glow of the ancient technology reflected in her eyes, and a thought crossed her mind. The device did not merely connect them, it made them stronger together. Her alien abilities and Kale's human instincts were blending in ways she could not have imagined. Kale approached cautiously, carrying a small bundle of scavenged supplies. "We can't stay here forever," he said. "We need a plan if we're going to survive and get back to the Baron's territory. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes." Lyra nodded. "I know, but we can't rush blindly. The planet is full of dangers. We need to train, to understand how far our connection can go." The two of them spent the next hours exploring the cave and its surroundings. The geothermal vents provided warmth, but also opportunities. Lyra tested her enhanced reflexes, moving quickly across slippery surfaces and dodging falling ice shards. Kale taught her how to use the environment strategically, setting traps with ice and rock to defend themselves if needed. The first lesson was patience. Kale showed Lyra how to observe the behaviors of the native predators, noting their patterns and weaknesses. Lyra, in turn, helped Kale enhance his senses, allowing him to detect movements that would have been invisible to an untrained human. Together, they discovered that they could anticipate threats before they arrived, giving them a critical advantage in survival. Days turned into a week as they trained in the icy wilderness. Their bond deepened, not only through shared experiences but through shared thoughts and emotions. The symbiotic device allowed them to communicate silently, to anticipate each other's needs without speaking. It was an unspoken trust, built in the crucible of life and death on Clyros 7. During one training session, Lyra noticed Kale hesitating before making a decision. "You are thinking too much," she said. "Sometimes you must trust instincts, not plans." Kyle smiled faintly. "Humans rely on both. Plans keep us alive, instincts make us strong. But you are right. I should trust the link more." They tested their abilities by navigating a treacherous ice canyon. Massive walls of frozen rock rose on either side, with deep crevices hidden beneath snow. Predatory creatures roamed nearby, drawn by the scent of living prey. Moving silently, Lyra led Kale through the canyon, using her enhanced vision to detect hidden dangers. Kale suggested routes and tactics, combining his tactical knowledge with her alien speed and reflexes. The creatures noticed them too late. By the time they were within striking distance, Lyra and Kale had already anticipated the ambush, avoiding the attack with ease. It was the first time they realized the full potential of their connection. Alone, neither of them would have survived the canyon. Together, they were nearly unstoppable. Even in the harshest moments, they found moments of quiet reflection. Lyra revealed fragments of her past, speaking of her childhood under the Baron's strict rule. "He taught me strength and loyalty," she said softly, her eyes distant. "But he never taught me compassion. I was trained to obey, not to survive for myself." Kale listened, understanding her pain. "My life was different, but not easy. I've faced commanders who valued rules over people, missions over lives. You learn quickly who is worthy of trust." Their shared stories strengthened their bond. They were not just allies. They were partners, each filling gaps in the other's experience and knowledge. Kale admired Lyra's determination and resilience, while she respected his courage and adaptability. One day, while exploring further from the cave, they stumbled upon the remnants of an ancient alien outpost. Crumbling walls and broken machinery hinted at a civilization long gone. Lyra's eyes lit up as she examined the technology. "This place, it is a treasure trove of knowledge. We can use this to improve our abilities further." Kyle nodded. "And maybe even find a way to reach the Baron faster. The more we know, the better prepared we will be." They spent hours studying the machinery. Lyra learned to interface with the devices, enhancing her own physical abilities and augmenting Kale's human reflexes. Kale, in turn, discovered tactical programs embedded in the systems, learning strategies that could help them plan infiltration and combat. Their combined skills now extended beyond survival. They were preparing for something far greater. Training was not without mistakes. One afternoon, Lyra misjudged the stability of an ice bridge. It cracked under her weight, sending her sliding toward a jagged cliff. Kale reacted instantly, reaching out through the link, guiding her movements and managing to pull her back just in time. They both collapsed on the snow, breathless and laughing despite the danger. "That was close," Kale said, shaking his head. "We can't afford mistakes like that when we face the Baron." Lyra nodded, brushing snow from her hair. "But we learn from mistakes. We will be ready." As the days passed, they also learned the value of observation and patience. Lyra could sense distant movements through the link, while Kale's human reasoning allowed them to predict the Baron's patrol patterns. They mapped out potential routes toward the Baron's fortress, noting hidden paths, supply caches, and weak points in the Baron's security. Their bond grew beyond strategy and survival. Each learned the other's mannerisms, thoughts, and emotions. In moments of quiet, Lyra could feel Kale's concern before he spoke, while Kale could sense her resolve even in her moments of doubt. They became a single force, their connection stronger than any tool or weapon. One evening, as the icy sun dipped behind the horizon, they settled near a warm geothermal vent. Lyra watched the shifting shadows and whispered, "We are stronger than I imagined. Alone I would have perished. Together, we are more than capable. We can face him." Kyle nodded. "Not just face him. We can outsmart him. And when the time comes, we will reclaim what was stolen from you." and prevent him from harming anyone else. The moment was brief, but significant. They were no longer merely survivors. They were strategists, preparing for a confrontation that would test every skill and instinct they had honed together. The frozen world around them seemed less hostile now, not because the danger had vanished, but because they had become stronger than it. The following day they continued their training, moving through the icy plains and testing their symbiotic abilities. Lyra practiced blending her alien agility with Kale's tactical maneuvers, while Kale learned to anticipate threats using her enhanced senses. Each encounter with predators or natural hazards refined their cooperation. Each success boosted their confidence. During a particularly harsh storm, they found shelter in the remains of an alien tower. The wind howled outside, but inside they were protected. Kale studied a navigation system embedded in the walls, and Lyra interfaced with it, unlocking maps that revealed hidden pathways across the ice plains. For the first time, they had a clear route toward the Baron's territory. As they prepared to leave, Lyra paused. "We have learned much," she said, "but this is only the beginning. The Baron has power, allies, and resources. Our survival so far is proof of our strength, but the challenge ahead will be far greater." Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "We've faced death together. We've learned from each other. Whatever comes, we will face it as one, and when the time comes, he will not see us coming." The storm outside began to subside, revealing the endless expanse of icy plains. Lyra and Kale stepped out, their minds focused, their connection stronger than ever. Every step forward was a step toward revenge, justice, and freedom. The journey had grown from survival into a mission that would test their abilities, their minds, and the bond they had forged in the frozen wasteland of Cleros 7. Together, they moved forward, ready to face the challenges ahead, ready to turn their connection into a weapon that even the Baron could not anticipate. Their adventure had only begun, but already it promised to be a journey that would change the fate of both worlds forever. The frozen plains of Cleros 7 stretched endlessly, but Lyra and Kale moved with purpose now. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. The storm that had raged for days had finally subsided, leaving the world blanketed in sparkling ice. Yet beauty offered no comfort. They were here for a mission, and survival alone was no longer enough. The Baron's fortress loomed somewhere beyond the icy horizon, a symbol of cruelty and power that had shaped Lyra's past. They had trained, they had strengthened their bond, and now it was time to put their abilities to the test. Kyle studied the maps they had uncovered in the alien tower, tracing potential paths with his finger. "There are patrol routes," he said, pointing to clusters of alien drones and guards. "We can use these valleys and ice ridges to avoid detection, but we'll need perfect timing. One mistake and the alarm will reach the fortress immediately." Lyra's eyes glinted. "Timing is nothing. Our link gives us an advantage. We can anticipate, react, and adapt faster than they expect. We move together like one mind in two bodies." They advanced cautiously, keeping low against the uneven terrain. Lyra's alien senses detected movements far ahead, while Kale's human intuition interpreted patterns in the patrol's behavior. Together they moved silently, using snowdrifts and frozen rock formations as cover. Every step required patience, every decision precise. Hours passed before their first real challenge appeared. A patrol of 4 drones rounded a ridge, their sensors scanning for movement. Lyra froze, her body instinctively signaling Kale through the link. He mirrored her stance, understanding her unspoken instructions. "Wait for my signal," Kale whispered, though the words were unnecessary. Their shared thoughts guided each other's actions. The drones moved closer, their mechanical limbs crunching over the ice. Lyra and Kale waited until the patrol was directly above them, then moved simultaneously, sliding down a hidden crevice. The drones passed, oblivious to the pair hiding beneath the ice. Lyra let out a quiet breath. "Perfect," she said. "Timing, precision. We are ready for more." The encounter strengthened their confidence, but they knew the real challenge lay ahead. The Baron's fortress was heavily guarded, equipped with automated defenses, alien soldiers, and advanced surveillance. They needed more than courage. They needed strategy. As they approached a ridge overlooking the Baron's territory, Lyra paused. "We need to gather information," she said. "We cannot storm the fortress blindly. We must understand the layout, the patrol patterns, and the weaknesses." Kyle nodded. "Agreed. Observation first, infiltration second. From their vantage point, they could see the fortress sprawling across a plateau. Towering walls of black alloy rose into the sky, dotted with turrets and observation posts. Energy shields shimmered faintly around the perimeter, and patrols moved like clockwork, their paths predictable yet dangerous. Lyra and Kale spent hours mapping every detail. They noted the frequency of drone sweeps, the timing of turret scans, and the locations of supply depots. The fortress was a complex network of security and power, but it was not invincible. Their bond allowed them to plan in ways the Baron would never anticipate. That night, they set up a hidden observation post in a nearby ice cave. Using the alien technology Lyra had discovered, they projected small holographic maps and marked patrol schedules. Kale suggested routes for infiltration, while Lyra proposed diversions using environmental traps. Their planning was meticulous, each idea tested mentally before they would act. "You see," Lyra said, "if we create a distraction here, the patrols will respond there. Then we move through the blind spot directly to the inner wall." Kale studied her plan. "It's risky, but it works. The link allows us to move faster and react quicker than the guards. We can do this." They tested the plan with smaller simulations in the ice fields, using natural formations to mimic the fortress's defenses. Lyra's speed and agility allowed them to evade imaginary sensors, while Kale's tactical thinking predicted possible mistakes. With each practice, their confidence grew. They were no longer just survivors, they were strategists. Days passed, and the fortress seemed closer with every step, yet the danger remained real. One afternoon, as they crossed a frozen river, a sudden tremor shook the ice. Predatory creatures, drawn by movement and sound, emerged from the cracks. Massive and fierce, their bodies were adapted to the freezing temperatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes. Lyra and Kale moved in perfect harmony. Lyra's agility and strength allowed her to distract the creatures, leading them away from Kale. He used his human ingenuity to set traps from ice and rock, redirecting the predator's path. Together they neutralized the threat without alerting the fortress. "That was close," Kale said, breathing heavily. Lyra smiled faintly. "We learn with every step. Danger is no longer a threat, it is a teacher." As night fell, they reached a ridge overlooking a supply depot within the fortress walls. From this distance, they could see the movement of guards and the routines of the fortress personnel. The depot contained supplies, weapons, and information critical to their mission. Kale suggested a small raid to weaken the fortress defenses before the main infiltration. Lyra agreed. "We take what we need, create confusion, and retreat. The Baron will not know who is responsible. This will be our first strike." They prepared for the raid, moving under the cover of darkness. The snow muffled their footsteps, and the symbiotic link guided their every movement. Lyra disabled a security panel with precision, while Kale slipped inside the depot, gathering supplies and data. Their timing was perfect, their actions coordinated like a single entity. The raid was a success. They returned to their hidden observation point with weapons, maps, and intelligence. They had struck the first blow without being detected, testing the Baron's defenses and learning more about his resources. The fortress was strong but not unbreakable. As they rested that night, Lyra reflected on their progress. "We are ready," she said quietly. "We understand his defenses, his routines, his weaknesses. Soon we will move deeper. The Baron believes he is untouchable, but he has underestimated the power of two beings working as one." Kale nodded. "We have learned to survive, to adapt, and to plan. The next step is riskier, but the link gives us an advantage. Together, we are stronger than he can imagine." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant signal, a faint pulse in the snowfields below. Lyra's senses detected movement, unfamiliar, deliberate, and strategic. Someone or something was approaching. Kale's instincts told him it was not a predator. This was intelligent, purposeful. They observed silently as a small scouting party from the fortress moved along the ridge. Lyra and Kale analyzed their formation, their pace, their equipment. It was the first real test of their infiltration strategy against live opponents. "We must remain hidden," Lyra whispered. "Let them pass, then we strike. Patience is our weapon now." The patrol passed without noticing them, giving Lyra and Kale the confidence to proceed with the next phase of their mission. They had survived the frozen plains, trained their minds and bodies, and struck the first blow against the Baron's fortress. Now the real challenge awaited, the infiltration of the fortress itself, where danger would be constant, and the stakes higher than ever. As dawn approached, The first light reflected off the icy walls of the fortress, and Lyra and Kale prepared to descend toward it. Every step forward was a test of skill, every decision a measure of their bond. The fortress seemed impenetrable from afar, but they had something no enemy could match: trust, coordination, and the unbreakable link between human and alien. The journey toward the Baron's fortress had begun. They were no longer mere survivors, they were strategists, warriors, and partners. And when they finally faced the Baron, he would discover that abandoning his daughter had been his greatest mistake. Lyra tightened her grip on the device that linked them, and Kyle adjusted his stance. The icy wind cut through the ridge, but neither felt its chill. Their minds were focused, their connection strong, and their goal clear. Survival had led them here, but now it was about more than life. It was about justice, strategy, and reclaiming what had been stolen. Together, they moved forward, shadowed by ice and snow, toward the fortress that had once seemed untouchable. Every heartbeat, every breath, every thought was in perfect harmony. The first strike had been made, but the mission was far from over. The Baron awaited them, confident in his power, unaware that the greatest threat he had ever faced was already at his doorstep. Two beings, united, unstoppable, and ready to change the fate of his empire. The fortress of Baron Zorath rose from the icy plateau like a dark monolith, sharp against the pale light of Clyros 7. Its black walls gleamed faintly, dotted with turrets and surveillance sensors. From a distance it seemed unbreachable, a symbol of power and cruelty, but Lyra and Kyle approached with calm determination, their bond stronger than ever, their minds synchronized through the symbiotic link. "This is it," Kale whispered, his eyes scanning the fortress. "We've trained for this moment. Every step must be precise. No mistakes." Lyra nodded, feeling the pulse of energy through her body from the device linking them. She could sense every potential threat before it arrived, every movement of the patrols and automated systems. Their planning and observation had brought them to this moment. Now it was time to act. They moved along a hidden ridge using natural ice formations as cover. Their shadows stretched across the frozen ground, but they remained unseen. Lyra's enhanced vision detected the first line of defense, a patrol of armored soldiers moving in a tight formation. Kale whispered a plan. "We create a diversion. I'll handle the outer sensors while you disable the patrol silently." Lyra's body flowed like water as she moved, her alien agility allowing her to avoid detection. With Kale's guidance, she approached the patrol from above, landing silently behind them. Using a combination of precise strikes and alien reflexes, she incapacitated the guards without raising an alarm. Kale monitored the sensors from a distance, manipulating energy currents to confuse the patrol drones. Within minutes, the first line of defense was neutralized. Lyra signaled Kale through their link, and they advanced toward the inner wall of the fortress. Their connection allowed them to move as one, each anticipating the other's movements. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured. They were no longer simply survivors. They were a coordinated force, a perfect blend of human strategy and alien skill. The inner courtyard was heavily guarded, with automated turrets scanning continuously. Kale studied their patterns while Lyra scouted ahead. "There's a small blind spot near the supply depot," Kale noted. "We can slip through if we time it right." Lyra nodded. Using her enhanced reflexes, she darted forward, guiding Kale through the blind spot. The turret swept past them, unaware of the invisible presence moving with precision. They reached the supply depot, where crates of weapons, armor, and information were stored. Lyra and Kale quickly gathered supplies, taking only what they needed, careful not to trigger alarms. As they moved to retreat, they encountered an unexpected obstacle, a second patrol larger and better equipped than the first. Lyra froze for a moment, feeling Kale's tension through the link. Then she smiled faintly. "We expected challenges," she said. "Now we overcome them." Kyle analyzed the formation. "We split. I take the left flank. You handle the right. Synchronize your movements with mine. We create confusion, then escape." They executed the plan perfectly. Lyra's speed and agility allowed her to dart between the soldiers, striking with precision and avoiding retaliation. Kale used his tactical skills to draw attention, creating openings for Lyra to exploit. Within minutes, the patrol was disoriented, and the two of them slipped away unnoticed. Their success was exhilarating, but they knew the hardest part was still ahead, confronting Baron Zorath himself. They had gathered intelligence, disrupted patrols, and tested their abilities in live combat. Now they had to reach the inner sanctum, the heart of the fortress, where the Baron commanded his empire. The path to the inner sanctum was treacherous. Automated defenses, energy barriers, and elite guards protected every corridor. Lyra and Kale moved silently, using shadows and terrain to their advantage. Their connection allowed them to anticipate danger, coordinate movements, and react instantly to unexpected threats. Finally, they reached the grand doors of the Baron's chamber. The doors were massive, made of reinforced alloy, and adorned with glowing symbols of power. Lyra's eyes glimmered. "This is where it ends," she whispered. Kyle nodded. "We do this together." No hesitation. They entered the chamber silently, their movements precise. The Baron sat upon a throne at the far end, his presence commanding and menacing. He had expected survivors, but not this. Lyra and Kale were unlike any threat he had faced, two beings united, unpredictable, and fully aware of each other's thoughts and actions. "You survived," the Baron said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Impressive. But foolish. Do you truly believe you can defeat me?" Lyra stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "You underestimated me, Father. You left me to die thinking the ice would finish what you started. But I am not the same. I have strength, strategy, and an ally who shares my will. Today you face justice." Kale's voice joined hers, steady and calm. "And we will succeed because we are united. Together nothing you do can stop us." The Baron rose, his form towering and imposing. Energy crackled around him, weapons and defenses at the ready. He moved with speed and precision. But Lyra and Kale were already anticipating him. Their link allowed them to predict his movements, coordinate strikes, and avoid attacks. Lyra darted forward, striking with precision, her movements a blur. Kale flanked the Baron, exploiting openings that Lyra created. Each strike was calculated, each movement synchronized. The Baron's defenses were formidable, but he was unprepared for their combined abilities. "You cannot defeat me," the Baron growled, unleashing a wave of energy toward them. Lyra and Kyle moved as one, deflecting and dodging with seamless coordination. Every attack was countered, every strategy anticipated. Their training, their bond, and their shared experience had prepared them for this moment. The battle raged, but it was not just physical, it was mental. Lyra and Kale's connection allowed them to communicate silently, plan and react faster than the Baron could comprehend. He was powerful, but his mind worked alone. They worked together, and unity proved stronger than raw power. Finally, Lyra found an opening. Using a combination of alien speed and Kale's tactical guidance, she disabled the Baron's energy shield. Kale struck simultaneously, targeting the control mechanism that powered the fortress's defenses. Energy systems faltered, alarms blared, and the elite guards hesitated, unsure how to respond. The Baron staggered, caught off guard by their coordination. Lyra's eyes burned with determination. "This ends now," she said, moving forward with unstoppable resolve. Kale flanked him, ready to block any counterattack. Together, they struck, not with the intent to destroy, but to neutralize. The Baron's defenses failed, and he was forced to surrender, recognizing the strength of their unity. Breathing heavily, Lyra and Kale stood over him. The Baron, once untouchable, now faced the consequences of his actions. Lyra's heart did not burn with hate, it burned with justice. "You abandoned me," she said quietly. "You underestimated what I could do. That was your mistake." Kyle added, "Your empire cannot continue under cruelty and fear. The people deserve better. Your reign ends here." The Baron's eyes flickered with recognition, a mixture of fear and disbelief. He had ruled through power, manipulation, and isolation. But he had never faced a bond like this. Two minds, two bodies, perfectly synchronized, guided by trust and purpose. As the Baron was restrained, Lyra and Kale accessed the fortress systems, ensuring that no retaliation could occur. Supply chains, weapons, and automated defenses were controlled, neutralized, or redirected. Their strategy had not only defeated the Baron physically, but had dismantled his empire from within. In the quiet that followed, Lyra looked at Kale. "We did it," she said softly. "Together we overcame him." Kale smiled faintly. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. There are still systems to stabilize, people to protect, and justice to maintain. Our bond has brought us this far, and it will guide us further." The Baron, now powerless, was left to contemplate the consequences of his actions. Lyra and Kale had proven that unity, trust, and strategy could overcome even the most formidable power. The fortress, once a symbol of fear, now stood under the control of those who would use it for protection and justice. As the first light of dawn broke over Clyros 7, Lyra and Kale stood together on the fortress balcony, surveying the icy plains. Their journey had been long, filled with danger and discovery. They had survived the harshest environment, trained their bodies and minds, and confronted the greatest challenge of all, their past and the Baron's tyranny. Yet in this victory, they found something greater than survival. They found partnership, trust, and a shared purpose. The symbiotic link was no longer just a tool. It was a bond that had shaped their destiny and would guide them toward a future where justice, strategy, and unity triumphed over cruelty and power. Lyra clenched her fists, feeling the pulse of energy through her body. "The Baron will not rise again," she said. "And we will make sure his people are safe." Kale nodded. "Together we will rebuild. Together we will ensure that no one suffers as you once did. This fortress is no longer a prison. It is a symbol of hope." The Baron's defeat marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Lyra and Kale had faced the ultimate challenge, and they had emerged victorious, not as individuals but as a single, unstoppable force. Their journey had transformed them, teaching them the true power of unity, strategy, and resilience. The frozen winds of Clyros 7 blew around them, but they stood strong. The fortress of Baron Zorath, once a symbol of cruelty and fear, now stood silent under the pale light of Clyros 7's twin moons. Lyra and Kale had spent the night securing the inner chambers, ensuring the Baron could no longer manipulate or harm anyone. The frost-crusted walls bore witness to their triumph, but there was no time for celebration. Justice and restoration required action. Lyra walked through the main hall, her eyes scanning the fortified corridors. The Baron's soldiers had surrendered peacefully, their weapons set aside after witnessing the coordination and skill of the two intruders. Kale followed, cataloging security systems, identifying which devices could be repurposed to protect the people rather than oppress them. "We must ensure his empire cannot rise again," Kale said, his voice calm but firm. "If we leave these systems unchecked, someone else could take his place, and the cycle of cruelty would continue." Lyra nodded. "We control the fortress now. We can transform it. No more fear, no more injustice. But first we must stabilize the city beyond the walls. The people are watching. They need hope, not more chaos." Together they accessed the fortress's communication network. Lyra interfaced with the alien systems, while Kale analyzed the information flows, identifying areas where misinformation or intimidation had previously been used. They broadcasted messages of peace, guidance, and protection, assuring the citizens that the Baron was no longer in power and that the fortress was under safe control. Citizens who had lived under fear and oppression cautiously emerged from hiding, drawn by the light of hope and the voices guiding them. Lyra stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city, her figure tall and commanding despite the frost-bitten air. Kale joined her, standing firmly beside her, their link allowing them to sense each other's confidence and resolve. "You hear them?" Lyra asked quietly. "They are afraid, but they are listening. They will follow if we lead them wisely." Kyle nodded. "And we will lead, not as rulers but as protectors. We have the knowledge, the skills, and the experience to guide them safely. They will learn that strength can be used to protect, not to harm." The first group of citizens approached cautiously, their expressions a mix of fear and curiosity. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady and reassuring. "We are here to help. The Baron's reign of fear has ended. This fortress, this city, and these lands are safe now. We will protect you, guide you, and ensure that no one suffers as you have in the past." Whispers of hope spread through the crowd. People who had hidden for years, fearing every shadow, began to gather closer, drawn by Lyra's calm authority and Kale's practical guidance. Together, the pair represented not only survival and strength, but also the promise of justice and unity. The Baron, restrained in the inner chambers, watched the unfolding events with a mixture of disbelief and frustration. He had once ruled through intimidation, relying on fear to maintain control. Now he was powerless, a reminder that unity and strategy could overcome even the most formidable authority. Lyra approached him, her eyes steady and unwavering. "Your time is over," she said. "You will no longer harm these people or anyone else. Your power is gone and your empire will be rebuilt without cruelty or fear." The Baron's gaze faltered. You are only one," he said, though he realized immediately that his words were wrong. There were two, human and alien, united, unstoppable, and perfectly coordinated. How could you defeat me?" Lyra's expression softened slightly, not with mercy but with clarity. "You taught me many things, Father, strength, obedience, survival. But you never taught me compassion. That is the power I now use. Strength without cruelty, skill without fear, and unity with purpose. That is what defeated you." Kale stepped forward. "Your reign depended on division, fear, and isolation. We are united, we are coordinated, and we act with justice. That is why you cannot prevail." The Baron's defiance waned, and he finally understood the truth. Power without wisdom, strength without partnership, and rule without justice would always falter. Lyra and Kale represented a force he could never anticipate: connection, trust, and shared purpose. Turning back to the people, Lyra addressed them once more. "We will rebuild this city together. We will restore what was lost, protect what remains, and ensure that no one lives in fear again. You have suffered enough, and now you have a choice: to help, to learn, and to grow, or to continue under oppression. The choice is yours, and we will guide you." Citizens began to step forward, inspired by her words. They offered to assist in repairs, to share knowledge, and to help transform the fortress into a place of safety and learning. Lyra and Kale worked tirelessly, coordinating teams, sharing resources, and teaching defensive strategies. Their bond continued to guide them, allowing them to anticipate needs and respond instantly to challenges. The days that followed were filled with reconstruction, training, and planning. Lyra taught the citizens to understand and use the fortress's defenses responsibly, while Kale trained them in tactics, survival skills, and strategic thinking. The symbiotic link between Lyra and Kale allowed them to act swiftly, communicate silently, and guide the people with precision. Slowly, the city transformed. Fear gave way to hope, uncertainty to confidence. The fortress, once a prison, became a sanctuary. Citizens learned to protect themselves, to support one another, and to trust in their leaders, not rulers, but guardians. Lyra and Kale became symbols of resilience and unity, demonstrating that survival, courage, and cooperation could overcome even the darkest oppression. During a quiet moment, Lyra and Kale stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The icy plains stretched beyond, but the fortress glowed with life and warmth. "We've done more than survive," Lyra said softly. "We've given them a future." Kyle smiled, feeling the energy of their bond. "And we've learned the true meaning of strength. Not power, not fear, but trust, unity, and purpose. Together we are stronger than any threat, any obstacle, any past injustice." The Baron, now confined and powerless, remained a reminder of what had been overcome. Lyra did not dwell on hatred. Her focus was on rebuilding, teaching, and ensuring that no one would ever suffer under his rule again. Justice had been served, but it was tempered with wisdom and care. In the weeks that followed, Lyra and Kale continued to strengthen the city and its defenses, train its people, and stabilize the surrounding regions. Rumors of the Baron's downfall spread, and neighboring settlements began to reach out, seeking guidance and protection. Lyra and Kale welcomed them, teaching them what they had learned about unity, strategy, and survival. Their partnership grew stronger with every passing day. The link between them, once a tool for survival, had become a bond that guided their actions, decisions, and emotions. They no longer needed to speak to anticipate each other's thoughts. Their connection was seamless, perfect, and unbreakable. One evening, as the twin moons of Clyros 7 reflected off the icy plains, Lyra and Kale stood together, looking toward the horizon. "We have changed this place," Lyra said, her voice filled with quiet pride. "We've turned fear into hope, oppression into protection. And we've done it together." Kale nodded. "And we will continue. Wherever injustice exists, wherever fear persists, we will act, not as conquerors, but as guardians, as allies, as a force that proves unity is stronger than cruelty." The fortress, once dark and foreboding, now stood as a beacon of resilience and hope. Lyra and Kale had faced the impossible, survived the harshest environment, defeated the most formidable enemy, and transformed a city under fear into a society of cooperation and justice. As they watched the people below, Rebuilding, learning, and thriving, Lyra realized something profound. Her journey had started with survival, had grown into strategy and strength, and had culminated in purpose and leadership. And through it all, Kale had been by her side, a partner, a guide, and a mirror of her courage and determination. Together, they had changed not only the fortress and its people, but themselves. They had discovered the true power of unity, trust, and resilience. They had proven that even the most oppressive power could be overcome when two minds and hearts worked as one. Lyra looked at Kale, a smile breaking across her face. "We did it," she said. "And this is just the beginning. There's a universe full of challenges, but together, there's nothing we cannot face." Kyle returned her smile, feeling the pulse of their connection. "Then let's move forward," he said. "Together, as allies, as partners, and as protectors of what is right. The future is ours to shape." The wind swept across the icy plains, carrying the promise of a new era. Lyra and Kale stood together, their bond unshakable, their purpose clear. The Baron's reign was over, the fortress was transformed, and a new chapter had begun, and in that moment, the frozen world of Clyro 7 seemed brighter, alive with hope, strength, and unity, proof that even in the harshest environments, courage, strategy, and partnership could overcome any obstacle.